This class is concerned with change management, and in particular we want to look at the ideas behind Lewin's change model. So let's jump straight in and look at Lewin's force field analysis. Now remember, we are talking about change here and the forces that lead to change and the resistance to change. So the model very simply could be represented like that. We have forces for change pushing on the organization and driving forces, and inside or outside the organization we have forces resisting the change and restraining forces, forces pulling it backwards. So it's a very simple representation of the types of forces acting on the organization. There are forces leading to change and forces resisting it, as I said. Quite simply, where there is an equilibrium between the two sets of forces, there will be no change. In order for change to occur, the driving force must exceed the restraining force. If I put the cursor onto the screen for a second, the force here, if that force is greater than this force, it will change. If both forces are the same, nothing will happen. Now, the analysis can be used to investigate the balance of power involved in the organization. It can be used to identify the key stakeholders on the issue: the workers, the shareholders, the managers, the consumer, whoever, the government. It can identify the opponents to change, who's resisting it and who are in favour, who are the allies. It identifies how to influence the target groups. So if we go back, all of those components are there. Who exactly are in the forces for change? Who are involved in the forces for change, and who are resisting it? And what do the stakeholders think? So it's quite a straightforward model in that sense. The model defines three stages in the process of change, what Lewin called unfreezing, change, and refreezing. So there are three stages in this model. Let's look at what assists the organization change, or what helps the change along. Well, allowing the process to be understood, that's certainly helpful. That'll help change to take place. And providing milestones for evaluating progress towards the change. The workers need to know how far the change has gone, how much more has got to come. So there's got to be communications, effective communications. Now, as I said earlier, there are three stages here: unfreezing, change, and refreezing. So on the unfreezing stage, this is the shake-up phase, perhaps triggered by declining sales or profits. So we have triggers causing the change. We have something causing it, which could be internal or external. It could be changing consumer tastes, government influence, society changes. It can be lots of things from the outside, or it could be on the inside. It could be how the technology is affecting the business on the inside. It could be changing working patterns, changing aspirations by the workers, different skill levels. It could be whatever. The result is an acceptance that the existing structures and ways are not working. Once it's obvious to the management and to the workers and to all the other stakeholders that the existing structure is not appropriate, it's got to be, if you like, unfrozen. It's got to be taken apart, and it has to change. To get people ready for change, it's necessary to develop an awareness of the necessity for change. It's got to be communicated. People have got to understand change must take place. They need to understand what sort of change, the nature of the change, the methods that are going to be used to make the change, and also needs to understand the needs of those who are affected. And finally, the ways that progress will be planned and monitored. So it's not just a question of having the change. People need to identify how far down the change road they have gone. What are the milestones, as I said earlier. So unfreezing requires these steps. The need for change must be communicated, the nature of the change, what's going to happen, how it will happen, what methods will be used, who will be affected, the needs for those who are affected, and finally, how far the change has gone and how much more has got to come must be communicated effectively. Changing itself, well, this is the process of devising and implementing the change. Before a change can take place, the problem must be defined, solutions must be identified. If the problems are not defined, no change will take place. And if a problem is determined, if a problem is obvious and it's manifest within the business, there is an issue, there must be a solution. If there's no solution, the change can't happen. And in order for changes to happen, an appropriate strategy must be implemented and it must be understood. And finally, the strategy must be implemented to bring about the change itself. So it's itemizing the various stages in bringing about the change. Once the change has been agreed and once the need for change has been recognized, then the momentum for change must be incorporated into the business culture. So it's locking in the changes and it's stabilising the situation. It's building new relationships given the change has happened. Then it's consolidating the business. It's making sure the business is secure and solid and working effectively with the change in place. It's evaluating the change and making sure that support is there to train people to work with the change or to implement whatever is required as a part of the change. And it's also necessary to prevent the organisation from slipping back into the old way of doing things, the pre-change world. Now all of this is known as refreezing in the Lewin's model. Refreezing means you're locking it all in. So we had the if you like, the unfreezing, then the change, and now the refreezing. So everything gets locked in, but it gets locked into the new way of doing business. Refreezing is complete when the new patterns are accepted and followed willingly. When everyone toes the line, everybody understands what the change was, why it was necessary, they recognise it's a better way of doing it, they fall in line with it. At that stage, the refreezing is complete. The business has been changed and it's now running under a different set of rules. So that's one view of change put forward by Lewin. It's quite a straightforward one, but it introduces the steps of unfreezing the business, changing the business in other words, and then going into the formal process of change and then refreezing it, getting the business running with the change in place. So that concludes this talk. Thank you for watching.